Housing sales continue to decline, but is a turnaround on the horizon? Welcome today to SRT Live. I am your host, Sean, with the Sean Richard Mortgage team here at Guaranteed Rate. Thanks so much for joining me. Excited to dive into it today. And so we're going to be talking about the housing market. We're going to be talking about what we're going to see in the coming months. But last week had a plethora of information that we need to get into. So without further ado, let's get everything started with the week in review. All right, so last week we did get some inflation data. We got PPI, which is Producer Price Index. So this is inflation at the wholesale level. Now, remember, when manufacturers are having increased to their cost, they're not necessarily going to be passing that on to consumers. And so we may not see all of this filter through to the consumer inflation report, CPI. And so this is a good indicator, though, of the direction that inflation is going prior to hitting the consumers. And so PPI came in at, oh my gosh, here we go. All right, so PPI came in month over month. We had PPI come in at negative 0.5% change, which is huge. This is massive. The expectation was a decline of 0.1%, and this is down from the previous reading of 0.2. Now remember, this is for the month of December. So November was 0.2. December was a decline of 0.5, which is a massive deal. Now year over year, we saw producer price index decline from 7.3% from the reading in December for November of 21 to November of 22, declined all the way down to 6.2% from December to December. So this is a pretty big deal. This is a significant decline, and we're continuing to see inflation move in the right direction. Now, if we strip out food and energy, which the Fed likes to do, we also had a nice decline going from 6.2% to 5.5% year over year. So some really good numbers on producer inflation, and that hopefully will translate into a nice decline in consumer inflation at our next CPI, or Consumer Price Index reading. We also got the National Association of Home Builder Home Index. Now, this measures builder sentiment about the current housing market and building environment going forward. And so this is rated on a scale of 0 to 100. And this has been low lately. This has been the last reading we got last month was down at 31. This reading, we saw a little bit of a tick up, and it came in at 35. Now, I want to show you something real quick. Let me go grab this. All right. So I'm going to show you a quick chart. And this is a chart of the National Association of Home Builders Index. Here we go. It's a little bit small. So essentially, you've got the current reading all the way down here, 35. Last month was down at 31 right there. But if you look at this, the last time we were at that level was April of 2020. Well, let's see what was going on in April of 2020. We had just gotten into the pandemic about 30 to 60 days prior to that, and we saw builder sentiment plummet, but we saw immediately tick back up. Now, we may have bottomed out, and we're starting to see a little bit of a V-shaped recovery in builder sentiment. So something to keep an eye on. Doesn't mean that we're going to see the exact same reaction. Every environment is different, but it does lead to some positive potential outcomes. So I wanted to show you that real quick. All right. We also got building permits and housing starts. So building permits is permits pulled on construction. Now, this isn't specifically for residential homes. This is construction kind of as a whole, but it gives us a general idea of the environment, the new construction environment, which includes housing. And so building permits came in at an annualized pace of 1.33 million. Now, this is compared to the expectations of 1.37 million and down from the previous month's reading of 1.35 million. So we're seeing construction permits slow down a little bit month over month. Now, could this be just due to seasonality? It very well could be. So we've got to keep an eye on that. But if we continue to see this slow down into the early part of 2023, then we're going to have to look at how that's going to have an impact on our housing market. And then we got housing starts. This is new starts on single family homes and apartments. A home is considered one start. An apartment is considered one start. These are single family buildings. So if you have an apartment that goes up that has 16 doors, that's 16 starts in that scenario. So this was also down from the previous month. Last month, we got a reading of an annualized pace of 1.401 million, and we got 1.382 million as of December. So down a little bit. Also came in higher than expectations, which was a little bit surprising. But we want to keep an eye on both permits and housing starts. That's going to give us plenty of information to get a feel for where we're heading from a building standpoint, along with that NAHB sentiment. Now, we got jobless claims last Thursday, as we always do. This came in to me personally as a big surprise on initial claims. So for those of you turning in for the first time, on Thursdays, we get jobless claims. We get initial and continuing. Initial is individuals filing for unemployment for the first time. Continuing is individuals renewing their unemployment benefits. So initial claims has been on the decline lately, and last week was no different. Initial claims came in at 190,000 week over week, which was crazy because that fell by 15,000 from the prior week from 205,000. And it came in below expectations of 214,000. So the market analysts were expecting initial jobless claims to tick up. You've probably seen in the media, on the news, on Twitter, on Facebook, everywhere that companies are laying off workers. And so we're expecting these numbers to climb, and we're not seeing that filter into the jobless claims yet. So the question is what type of jobs are being let go, and who are these workers that are being let go? Are these professional single job workers? Are these multiple job workers? Those are some of the questions that if we answer, we may have a better insight into exactly why we're seeing jobless claims, unemployment claims decline in the face of layoffs from large companies. Continuing claims came in at 1.647 million. This is actually up just a little bit from the previous reading of 1.63 million, but below the expectation of 1.66 million. So we're seeing companies hold on to employees. We're seeing hiring slow down a little bit. And that's been the trend for a few, probably say the last 6 to 12 weeks. Now, if that wasn't enough, we also got existing home sales. Now, this is the big monthly report for you real estate agents out there, because this existing home sales makes up about 90% of home sale activity in the country. So existing home sales ended up down 1.5% month over month to an annualized pace of 4.02 million. Now, ultimately in 2022, we ended up with about 5.08 million in home sales, existing home sales, but annualized pace of 4.02. We're continuing to see existing home sales slow down, and that's helped out with inventory. We're seeing inventory last a little bit longer on market for a number of reasons. We're seeing inventory levels rise as far as number of months of inventory due to slowing sales, with the various pieces that are impacting that demand, such as the elevated interest rate environment we're in and the rising home prices that we saw over the past several years. Now, looking ahead this week, we've got a low-key start to this week. Yesterday and today, minimal data. Tomorrow, not a whole lot that we're going to see. But starting on Thursday, we're, of course, going to get jobless claims again. We get the first reading of Q4 GDP. That's expected to come in at a growth of 2.6%. And then we also get new home sales. So we're going to get a vibe on what's going on in builders' inventory and those new homes. And then on Friday, we get another big inflation report. We get PCE, which is personal consumption expenditure. That's expected to mirror CPI from this most recent reading. Hopefully, see a nice little decline there. Again, as inflation comes down, we should see mortgage rates decline as well. We also get pending home sales, which is going to give us a heads up on what existing home sales is going to look like in the next monthly reading. And then also on Friday, we get the University of Michigan consumer sentiment, so we can get a pulse on how consumers are feeling about the economy and where things are headed. So all great information for us to kind of pull out some nuggets of information and utilize that to have better conversations with our clients. Now, kind of revamped this last segment. Instead of what I'm focused on going forward, I really want to translate this for any of you. So if you're a home buyer or a homeowner out there watching, I want to translate some of this information. If you're a real estate agent, I want to put this in terms that you can easily explain to home buyers that are maybe not versed in all of this economic and real estate data. So this new segment is really called what's it all mean? And we're going to be breaking down the information that I go over into digestible ideas, thoughts, so that way you can understand exactly what's going on and how it impacts you as a real estate agent and how it impacts you as a home buyer or a homeowner. So ultimately, we talked about home sales slowing. So what does that really mean? How does that impact our industry, our economy, and you? So home sales have slowed in Q4, and that's typical. We do see a decline in home sales typically at the end of the year, right at the beginning of the year, due to the seasonality of the real estate industry. This has allowed inventory to play a little bit of catch up. So what does this mean going forward? And so I think what we're setting up for is a potential of another robust real estate market as we head into the middle and back half of 2023. And that really boils down to the slowing inventory. We also have slowing construction on the new build side, which is also hindering inventory. We've got inflation working its way down, which as it continues to decline, it's going to bring mortgage interest rates down with it. And that's going to push demand back into the market. We're also starting to see a little bit of price stabilization. We had prices going through the roof over the last 24 months. Over the last 60 to 120 days, we've seen prices start to stabilize. They've come down, they've softened, as I like to say. And so we're still seeing a little bit of price reductions around the Metroplex. But as demand comes back and those rates decline, demand comes back, we're going to see the slight decline that we're seeing in home prices. We're going to see that stabilize, kind of level off. And then we're going to start to see it go back up as we head into a higher demand environment without a significant increase to supply. And then I think the other aspect that really plays a role that we have to be aware of is the market and the buyers, sellers, real estate agents, the psychology of new normal. I think we're all starting to realize that we're not going to see a dramatically different environment. I think there's a lot of buyers, sellers, real estate agents out there that have realized that we're not likely to see a crash in the housing market, especially here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, where we've got so many reasons to not have a crash. We've got jobs incoming. We've got buyer demand that's out there waiting for the environment to the rate environment to reduce a little bit. So I think we're starting to see the psychology of new normal. I think everyone's realizing that, hey, this is kind of the environment we're going to be in for the foreseeable future. And so I can take my foot off of the brakes a little bit and dip my toes into the market. And so if you're a home buyer, really what this means is we've got this period of time that we've been in for about 60 days or so, where we've got stable and reduced prices. We've got slightly reduced interest rates, and we have less competition in the market. And so I've been saying this for a little while now, but we're really in a window of the best opportunity to buy in the last 18 to 24 months. And I think that window is going to end, and it's going to start. We're going to start to see prices rise a little bit further into the year based on all the information I just covered. And real estate agents out there that are watching, these are great conversations to have with your clients. Talk about where the market is potentially heading, really understand their pain points, their needs, so that way you can diagnose and make the best recommendations to help them win in the current market. The best type of equity is the equity that you start building right away. So if you're a non-homeowner, starting that equity building sooner rather than later is going to build significantly more wealth than waiting 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. But it still needs to be the right solution for you. All right, gang, that has been this episode of SRT Live. I really appreciate you joining me. Again, I'm your host, Sean, with the Sean Richard Mortgage team here at Guaranteed Rate. If you are watching in our private Facebook group, thank you so much for being an incredible part of our community. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button somewhere over there. Hit that subscribe button so that way you can have up-to-date real estate information and tools at your disposal. Thank you so much for joining me, and have an incredible rest of your week.